Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer on the hidden economic engine that literally powers our vacations. When we think of tourism, we usually picture beautiful beaches, historic cities, maybe a really relaxing resort. But behind the scenes of every single getaway is a massive, highly complex, and honestly, sometimes fragile economic machine. So today, we're taking a structured look at the economics of tourism destinations, turning those abstract academic frameworks into a clear visual guide. Let's get into it. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. What exactly is a tourist? 2. The economics of experiences. 3. Counting the invisible industry. 4. The competitiveness of a destination. And 5. Winning the tourism game. Starting right off with Section 1, what exactly is a tourist, from conceptual to operational? Okay, let's dive into this with a pretty simple question. Are you a tourist right now? Seriously, think about your last business trip or maybe a stint working remotely from a cafe in a completely different city. Does that make you a tourist? Pinning down exactly who qualifies as a traveler is actually the very first major hurdle in tourism economics. There's a fascinating contrast here between the philosophy of tourism and, well, the math. Back in 1942, scholars Hunziker and Kropf came up with a conceptual definition that explicitly excluded business trips because they were connected to an earning activity. It even excluded domestic travel. But national statistics offices, they can't work with that. They need an operational definition to actually count heads. They don't care about philosophy, they just need to know who's a visitor, who's staying overnight as a tourist, and who's leaving the exact same day as an excursionist. So the crucial point we rely on today is the globally accepted framework from the UNWTO. It rests on three main pillars: movement, a duration of less than a year, and a purpose that isn't paid from within the destination itself. This is exactly why a business traveler is considered a tourist, because their paycheck comes from back home. But notice that phrase, usual environment. That's based on frequency, distance, and routine. And it's exactly why the modern digital nomad represents such a huge statistical gray area. If you live in Bali for 6 months working on your laptop, have you established a new usual environment, or are you just on a really, really long vacation? Moving right along to Section 2, the economics of experiences. Why tourism breaks the mold. This structural difference is the core problem we're dealing with. In traditional manufacturing, you make a car, you put it in a lot, and if it doesn't sell today, fine, you sell it tomorrow. Tourism does not work like that at all. The product is inseparable from the location. You literally have to fly to Rome to see the Colosseum. It's heterogeneous, meaning no two trips are ever identical, and most importantly, it's non-storable. An empty hotel room on a Tuesday night is like spoiled milk. That revenue is lost forever. This structural rigidity of supply is exactly why the industry relies so heavily on intense yield management and constant price fluctuations just to survive. Tourism also relies incredibly heavily on the natural environment, which functions as a public good. Resources are generally split by whether they're rival, meaning my use limits your use, and how easy it is to exclude non-payers. Tourism often leans on low-exclusion rival resources. Think about a beautiful, easily accessible natural beach. It's totally free to enter, but if it gets too crowded, the experience is ruined for everyone. Without strict public intervention and management, tourism absolutely risks the tragic exhaustion of the very resources it relies upon. To truly grasp the vulnerability of this economic model, we just have to look at what happens when the movement of people simply stops. During the COVID-19 pandemic, global international tourist arrivals plummeted by a staggering 2.6 billion. And the immediate economic fallout from that drop? Try a $4.2 trillion loss in direct tourism GDP. Because the supply is so rigid, hotels and airlines still have massive fixed costs like maintenance and depreciation, but the demand is highly sensitive to external shocks. The entire industry suffered absolutely catastrophic financial damage. So how do we even calculate that kind of damage? That brings us to Section 3, counting the invisible industry, the tourism satellite account. Here's the thing. Tourism isn't actually recognized as a single, standalone industry in standard national accounting. As scholars Burkhart and Medlick noted, the components of a tourist product share only the common function of supplying tourist needs. The hotel sector, passenger rail, local restaurants, retail, these are all entirely different industries. Tourism is an amalgam. So to figure out its actual economic size, economists have to perform a massive accounting trick. Let's break down how this works. To solve this problem, the UN developed the Tourism Satellite Account, or TSA. It works in 3 distinct steps. First, you measure the demand. That's everything a visitor consumes, from flights to heavily subsidized museum tickets. Second, you measure the supply. the output of domestic industries that specifically cater to those tourists. Finally, you link them together in what's known as Table 6, mapping exactly how much domestic production was driven purely by tourists' dollars. Now, the TSA is a brilliant statistical tool for sure, but we have to understand its limitations. It only measures the direct impact of tourism expenditure. It completely misses the ripple effects. It doesn't capture the indirect impact, like a massive resort buying milk from a local dairy farm. And it totally misses the induced impact, which is the hotel staff spending their wages at the local grocery store. To get that full picture, economists actually have to build separate, highly complex social accounting matrices. Section 4, the competitiveness of a destination, frameworks for survival. Now we're zooming out to the macro level to see exactly how destinations survive in this fierce, globally measured market. A foundational concept here is really grasping the difference between comparative and competitive advantage. Think of a destination kind of like an athlete. Comparative advantage is the athlete's raw genetic talent, so the destination's natural climate, its historic ruins, its beaches. But having great raw resources isn't enough, right? Competitive advantage is the athlete's training and strategy. It's how effectively the destination takes those raw endowments and builds infrastructure, safety protocols, and marketing around them to actually add value. To audit this, experts use the Ritchie-Crouch conceptual model, which is widely considered the most comprehensive framework out there for destination competitiveness. It acts like an ultimate checklist. First up, you have your core attractors that draw people in. But those must be propped up by supporting factors, things like reliable Wi-Fi and accessible airports. Then you have qualifying determinants. These are factors kind of outside a destination's direct control, like its global location or regional safety. And finally, sitting on top of the whole shebang is destination management, the daily grind of executing a long-term strategic plan. But why go through all this incredible effort? Well, it's because of the experience economy. Pine and Gilmore called this the sensorialization of things. A destination can't just offer a clean bed and a nice view anymore. They must intentionally stage unique, totally memorable experiences. When a destination successfully co-creates an extraordinary experience with a tourist, it drastically increases that tourist's willingness to pay. This creates a consumer surplus, where the visitor feels they got immense value, and a producer surplus, driving massive economic success for the region. Of course, value creation isn't happening in a vacuum. Destinations face intense, sometimes crushing pressures, which is brilliantly captured by applying Porter's 5 forces to tourism. A destination has to fend off new, emerging tourist hotspots. That's the threat of new entrants. They have to deal with the bargaining power of massive global tour operators, the ever-present threat of substitutes like high-speed rail replacing short flights, and fierce rivalry with neighboring regions. It is a highly strategic, incredibly competitive battlefield. Finally, we hit Section 5, winning the tourism game, strategies and diagnostics. What are the specific tools these places use to stay on top? Synthesizing the major economic models, winning essentially comes down to aggressively managing these key factors. You absolutely have to ensure your attractions are sustainable. Otherwise, you literally destroy your own core resource. You must innovate constantly to fight off those substitute threats we just discussed. You need rigorous strategic planning that asks, where are we, where do we want to be, and how do we get there? And all of this must be wrapped in strong positioning, distinct branding, and flawless quality management. So, how does a destination actually know what to fix? They use the Importance Performance Analysis Grid, or IPA. This is a visual tool that plots out every feature of a destination. If something is highly important and you're performing well, that's Quadrant 1, you just maintain it. If you're pouring money into something nobody cares about, Quadrant 2, well, that's wasted effort. But the absolute crucial point is Quadrant 4. These are factors that tourists deem highly important, but the destination is failing at. This is the critical zone where policy and investment must immediately pivot. Let's wrap up this explainer by turning the lens right onto your own world. Think about the city or area where you live. If you were to run a macroeconomic diagnostic on it as a tourism destination, what actually falls into Quadrant 4? What is incredibly important to visitors, maybe it's public transit, clean streets, or affordable dining, but is severely underperforming? Once you start looking at your local environment through the lens of supply rigidity, competitive advantage, and performance grids, I promise you'll start to see this invisible industry operating all around you. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.